The last time humanity let their god-tier battleships loose, half the galaxy had been vaporized. Now Logan Simpson, captain of the most powerful dreadnought ever built, tensed as he entered the alien-lined council chamber, dreading the desperation that would make them beg the humans to join another war. He set his jaw, fixing his eyes straight ahead, as he strode to the center of the amphitheater, crammed with 100 alien races. His battleship gray uniform, utilitarian and unadorned, compared to the flashy regalia of the gathered delegates, broadcasted his purpose. He wasn't here to debate. He was here to fight. The Ocampa delegate, Cygnus, stood at the podium, his voice strained. And though our throne world has not yet fallen, our defenses cannot hold out much longer against the Kryn Dominion's assault. Their ships eclipse ours in size and power. We need the Council's aid. One by one, the assembled delegates gave variations of the same excuse. Forces depleted, ships needed to defend their own borders, a tragic inability to assist the Ocamper. Cygnus' shoulders slumped further with each refusal, until his gaze landed on Logan, and a desperate hope kindled in his eyes. There is one other recourse, humanity's battleships. A single one could turn the tide against the Kryn. The chamber erupted in frantic objections. Absolutely not. We all remember what happened last time. Human ships are too powerful. It's like giving a nuclear bomb to cavemen. If the humans get involved, they'll never stop conquering. We barely survived their last intergalactic crusade. Logan remained still, face impassive, even as a montage of memories flashed through his mind. The monstrous shapes of human dreadnoughts drifting over shattered worlds. Cities melted to glass under the glare of their main cannons. The few alien fleets who tried to stand against them vaporized in the blink of an eye. The counselors were right to be afraid. But from the sound of this Kryn Dominion, there might not be any other choice. If someone didn't stop them, these Kryn would roll over the whole galaxy. And if it took unleashing the human monster to stop them, well, Ocampa wouldn't be the only world to burn. The Kryn would learn the depths of their mistake in provoking humanity's wrath. Logan stepped forward, the babble of protests fading to silence at his approach. He met Cygnus' pleading gaze, jaw set. There was no pleasure in his eyes as he said the words he knew the galaxy would regret. The human battleship, Terra's Fury, will aid you against the Kryn. We will show them what it means to start a war with humanity. A resounding crack echoed through the council chamber as Logan slammed his fist down on the table, leaving a spider web of cracks in the reinforced surface. The clamorous debate died instantly as every eye in the room snapped to the imposing human. Logan rose to his full height, squaring his shoulders. His voice was level, but laced with steel. The Ocampa have called for aid, as is their right under Federation law. I will take a battle group to their defense. Shouts of protest began to rise, but Logan cut them off with a sharp chop of his hand. This will not be a full deployment. I'll go personally with a small force and assess the threat. We'll do what's necessary to break the CR and assault no more. Mutters still ran through the gathered delegates, but none challenged the human directly. They knew that once humanity set course, there was no dissuading them. As the council dispersed, the Ocampan Cygnus approached Logan. Gratitude radiated from him, even as old unease lurked behind his eyes. You have my deepest thanks, Captain. I know your people's history makes this difficult. Logan brushed off the thanks with a curt nod, unwilling to dwell on the bloody memories. Get me your latest intelligence on the Kryn, their movements, disposition, everything. My staff needs it to start planning now. Cygnus fidgeted, seeming to war with himself before speaking. There is one more thing, Captain. When we last tried to negotiate with the Kryn, they said something strange. They said they knew about humanity, that this galaxy wasn't undefended. Logan went rigid, a chill crawling up his spine. They know about us. What exactly do they know? Cygnus could only spread his hands helplessly. We truly don't know, Captain. But they know you're out there. Logan's boots thudded on the deck of the Indomitable's bridge as he strode through the blast doors. His face was set in a grim mask, barely acknowledging the salutes of the bridge crew as he made a beeline for the command chair. Commander Reeves, his first officer, snapped to attention as Logan settled into his seat. "Status report, Commander. The task force is assembled and ready, sir. 3 battleships, 6 cruisers, and a dozen destroyers, all loaded for bear. We can be underway within the hour," Reeves replied, his voice crisp and efficient. Logan nodded, his mind already racing ahead. "Good. Reeves, I need you to dig into our archives, going back to the early days of human exploration. Look for any mention of a race called the Kryn Dominion or any similar names. They seem to know about us, but I'll be damned if I know anything about them." Reeves' brow furrowed, but he nodded sharply. "Aye, sir. I'll put our best analysts on it." Turning to the communication station, Logan barked, "Lieutenant, get me a secure channel to Admiral Hawkins at Terran Command. Priority 1 encryption." As the lieutenant's fingers danced across the console, Logan found himself drumming his fingers on the armrest, a nervous tic he thought he'd left behind years ago. There was something about this whole situation that felt familiar, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. The view screen flickered to life, resolving into the weathered, no-nonsense face of Admiral Hawkins. "Captain Simpson," he greeted, his tone grave. "I've been briefed on the situation. You're doing the right thing, son, but tread carefully. We're in uncharted territory here." Logan leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Admiral, the Kryn claim to know about humanity, but we've never encountered them before. Could they be referring to our history, our reputation?" Hawkins' frown deepened, concern etching lines into his face. "It's possible, Captain. You know as well as I do that our past military actions have left an indelible mark on the galaxy's psyche. Some races still tremble at the mere mention of human battleships." His eyes hardened, a steely glint entering them. "But that doesn't explain how a race from outside our galaxy would know of those events. Something doesn't add up here, Simpson. Watch your back out there." The Indomitable's shields flared under a barrage of CRIM missiles, the impacts reverberating through the ship's superstructure. Logan gripped the armrests of his command chair, his eyes locked on the tactical display. "Shield holding at 70%, reported Lieutenant Cato from the op station. Minor damage to decks 4 and 7. Repair teams en route." Logan nodded, his jaw tight. The Kryn ships were tough, their armor far thicker than any he'd encountered before, but they were about to learn that humanity had a few surprises up its sleeve. "Engage Theta protocols," he ordered, his voice calm and level. "Let's show them what we can do." Across the human fleet, a transformation was taking place. Emitters and projectors that had lain dormant, hidden beneath innocuous hull plating, now thrummed to life. Capacitors charged with exotic energies, the culmination of decades of clandestine research. The Kryn ships, sensing a shift in the battle's tide, surged forward, their weapons charging for another salvo. But before they could fire, the human ship struck. Lances of pure white energy, so bright they seared the eye, leaped from the human battleships. They crossed the void in an instant, spearing the Kryn vessels with pinpoint precision. Armor that had weathered the mightiest of conventional weapons simply vaporized, parting like mist before the sun. Missiles followed in the energy beam's wake, their warheads pulsing with an eerie purple glow. They struck home, and reality itself seemed to buckle. Kryn ships twisted and warped, their hulls distorted by forces beyond mere physics. Some simply vanished, torn apart by localized rifts in space-time. On the Indomitable's bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence as the Kryn fleet reeled, their formation shattering under the onslaught of impossible weapons. "Theta protocols are a success, sir," Commander Reeves reported, a note of awe in his voice. "The Kryn ships are in complete disarray." Logan allowed himself a grim smile. "Press the attack. All ships close to point-blank range. Let's finish this." The human fleet surged forward, closing the distance to the stricken Kryn vessels with breathtaking speed. The Indomitable led the charge, its weapons never ceasing their barrage as it plowed through the debris field of shattered enemy ships. The bridge shuddered under the strain, the inertial dampeners struggling to compensate for the violent maneuvers. Logan held fast to his chair, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. They were winning, the Kryn fleet falling before the might of human ingenuity, but the victory was coming at a cost. The display showed several human ships blinking out, destroyed or crippled by the sheer ferocity of the close-quarters battle. Many more flashed amber or red, indicating varying degrees of damage. Logan's eyes hardened as he watched a destroyer, the Dauntless, take a direct hit from a Kryn energy beam. The smaller ship crumpled like tin foil, its reactor going critical in a blinding flash. They couldn't sustain these losses for long. Even with the Theta protocols, the Kryn still outnumbered them significantly. They had to end this, and fast, before attrition turned the tide against them. "Concentrate fire on their command ship," Logan barked, spotting the massive Kryn dreadnought at the heart of the enemy formation. "If we can take out their leadership, the rest may lose cohesion." The Indomitable shuddered as it took a glancing blow, sparks cascading from overloaded consoles. Logan ignored them, his focus absolute. "Divert power from non-essential systems to weapons and shields," he ordered. "Ram us down their throats if you have to, but take out that dreadnought." The crew scrambled to comply, their efforts fueled by a desperate determination. The Indomitable surged forward, its weapons glowing white-hot as they poured every ounce of power into the attack. The Kryn dreadnought loomed ahead, its massive hull scared and pitted but still intact. It turned ponderously to face the oncoming human flagship, its own weapons charging to unleash hell. The two titans of the battlefield closed on each other, the fabric of space itself warping under the stress of their impending clash. On the Indomitable's bridge, Logan leaned forward in his seat, every muscle tense. This was it, the moment of truth. In the next few seconds, the fate of the Ocampa and perhaps the entire galaxy would be decided. The Indomitable's weapons reached critical charge, the energies contained within them screaming for release. Logan opened his mouth to give the order to fire, to pour everything they had into one final desperate attack. Just as Logan's finger began to tighten on the trigger, a resounding boom shook the Indomitable, nearly hurling him from his seat. Damage alerts screamed as the lights flickered. "Report," he barked, adrenaline surging through his veins. "New contacts, Captain," Cato called out, her voice taut with disbelief. "A massive wave of Kryn ships just dropped out of hyperspace, right on top of us." Logan's head snapped to the view screen, his eyes widening at the sight. The Kryn reinforcements were staggering in size and number, dwarfing the fleet they'd been battling, and at their center. "Mother of God," he breathed, "is that what I think it is?" "Confirmed, sir," Reeves said grimly. "Kryn dreadnought, and not just one, or I count 3 plus at least a dozen battleships of a class we've never seen before." Logan felt his blood run cold. Dreadnoughts were the stuff of nightmares, behemoths bristling with enough firepower to annihilate entire fleets. That the Kryn had them, and in such numbers, it defied belief. "Their technological capabilities," he murmured, his mind racing. "We've grossly underestimated them." As if to punctuate his words, the lead dreadnought opened fire, its massive energy cannons raking across the human formation. The beams were blinding, searing, tearing through shields and hull plating like paper. The Indomitable heaved as a beam grazed its flank, alarms blaring across the bridge. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Crew members hurled from their stations, shields down to 30%. Cato shouted over the cacophony. Hull breaches on decks 5 through 12. On the view screen, Logan watched in horror as human ships were vaporized, reduced to expanding clouds of debris in an instant. Others were left drifting. Hulls blackened and hold leaking atmosphere in bodies. They couldn't withstand this onslaught, not for long. They needed a plan, a miracle, and they needed it now. "Commander Reeves," Logan yelled, struggling to make himself heard over the din of battle. "That lead dreadnought, It's our primary target. We need to take it out, or at least cripple it long enough for the fleet to regroup. Give me options now." Reeves, his face ashen but determined, hunched over the tactical display, his fingers flying over the controls. "Sir, there might be one option," he said after a moment, his voice strained. "The Theta protocols. There's one we haven't used yet." Logan's eyebrows shot up. The Theta arsenal had already proven itself to be beyond anything the Kryn had anticipated. If there was something more. "I'm listening," he said. "It's a focused gravity well projector," Reeves explained, bringing up a schematic on the display. "Highly experimental. In theory, it could create a localized singularity, a miniature black hole." Logan's breath caught in his throat as he grasped the implications. A black hole, however small, would create gravitational forces of unimaginable intensity. Any ship caught in its vicinity would be torn apart, ripped into its component atoms. "It could work," he murmured, a glimmer of hope kindling in his chest. "A weapon like that. It could take out a dreadnought." "More than that, sir," Reeves said. "If we could lure their fleet or even a significant portion of it into the singularity's radius," he didn't need to finish. The devastating potential was clear, but so too were the risks. "I'm sensing a but here, Commander," Logan said. Reeves nodded gravely. "The projector is untested. There's a risk, a significant risk, that the singularity could destabilize if that happens." Logan's jaw clenched as he completed the unspoken thought. An unstable singularity would grow, unchecked and all-consuming. It wouldn't just destroy the Corian fleet. It would devour the Ocampa system and anything else unfortunate enough to be in its path. It was a staggering gamble. The fate of billions balanced on the knife's edge of an untested weapon. But as the Indomitable shuddered under another direct hit as more human ships winked out on the tactical display, Logan knew they had no choice. They were out of options, out of time. "Prepare the gravity well projector," he ordered, his voice hard as steel. "And plot a course. We're going to lure that dreadnought, and as much of the Kryn fleet, as we can into the singularity's range." He met Reeves' eyes, saw the understanding and the fear in their depths. This was it, the moment of truth. "One way or another," Logan said softly, "we end this here and now." Reeves nodded sharply, turning to relay the orders. Logan settled back into his command chair, his fingers tightening on the armrests. The Indomitable surged forward, engine straining as it plowed through the debris field straight towards the looming behemoth of the Kryn dreadnought. Around it, the remnants of the human fleet formed up, a phalanx of battered but unbroken warriors. They were the tip of the spear, the vanguard of humanity's last desperate charge. And as the dreadnought swelled in the view screen, as the brightness of its energy cannons charging filled the bridge, Logan felt a strange calm descend over him. Live or die, they would face the Kryn as humans always had, unbowed, unbroken, defiant to the last. The gravity well projector thrummed to life, its power building to a crescendo. Logan's hand hovered over the firing control, his eyes locked on the dreadnought. "To the end," he whispered an oath and a prayer in one, "to the very end." And with a final defiant roar, the Indomitable plunged headlong into the maelstrom. Logan's hand hovered over the control panel, ready to cut the transmission at the first sign of treachery, but morbid curiosity stayed his hand. He had to know what drove the Kryn to this relentless aggression. The figure that materialized on the view screen was a nightmarish fusion of man and machine. Elaborate armor encased a form that seemed more cybernetic than biological, with glowing optics where eyes should be. When it spoke, its voice reverberated with a metallic echo. "Captain Simpson, I am Warlord Cax of the Kryn Dominion. Your ships have proven unexpectedly formidable, but you must see the futility of your defiance. Surrender, and your lives will be spared." Logan's fingers tightened on the armrest, his jaw clenching. "Warlord Cax, you seem to know much about us, yet we know little of you. Why attack the Ocampa? What do you seek to gain?" Cax's laughter grated like rusted gears. "Humans, ever curious. Very well, I shall indulge you. The Ocamper are but a means to an end. It is you, humanity, who are our true quarry. But why? What have we done to earn your enmity? It is not what you have done, but what you will do, Karks intoned. We have glimpsed your future, Captain, the empire you will forge, the worlds you will subjugate. The Kryn Dominion cannot allow this to pass. We will end you here before you become a threat. Logan reeled, the warlord's words striking like physical blows. The future Cax described was anathema to everything he believed, everything humanity stood for. You're wrong, he ground out. That's not who we are. We're not conquerors or tyrants. We only want to live in peace. Peace. Kayak spat the word like a curse. There can be no peace with a race as dangerous as yours. You will expand, consume, destroy. It is your nature. The only peace is the peace of the grave. The screen went dark, leaving Logan in stunned silence. The Kryn's motives were clear now, but they defied reason. Could humanity truly become the nightmare empire Kayaks foretold? The thought chilled him to the core, but it changed nothing. They still had a battle to win. Commander Reeves, Logan said grimly, ready the gravity well projector. It's time to finish this. Reeves nodded sharply, his fingers flying over the console. Aye, sir. Projector charging. Ready to fire on your command. Logan's gaze locked on the tactical display on the pulsing red icon of the Kryn dreadnought, the ship that had butchered his fleet that sought to exterminate his entire species based on some twisted vision of the future. No more, no further. This ended here, one way or another. Fire. The Indomitable shuddered as the gravity well projector unleashed its power. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then space itself seemed to convulse and contort as the artificial singularity blossomed into existence, a perfect black sphere ringed by a maelstrom of warped starlight. Alarm screamed as the singularity's pull seized the Indomitable, dragging it inexorably towards the roiling event horizon. Logan clung to his chair, fighting to remain upright, as the deck pitched beneath him. On the view screen, he saw the Kryn ships caught in the same inexorable grasp. Cruisers and battleships alike spun helplessly, their hulls groaning and buckling under the immense tidal forces. Escape pods and shuttles streaked from the doomed vessels only to be swallowed by the hungry void. And at the center of it all, the Kryn dreadnought struggled against the pull, its engines flaring with desperate brilliance. For a moment, it seemed as if the mammoth ship might break free. But then, with a soundless scream of tortured metal, the dreadnought came apart, its hull shattered into a million fragments, whirling into the abyss like leaves in a storm. Logan watched the carnage unfold, his heart pounding, his breath coming in ragged gasps. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd done it. The Kryn fleet was broken, their dreadnought destroyed. The Ocampo were safe. But even as relief washed over him, Logan couldn't shake the icy dread that gripped his heart. Cox's final words echoed in his mind. A chilling prophecy of a dark future. Was this truly a victory, or just the first shot in a war that would span centuries, a war that would see humanity become the very thing they fought against? Logan had no answers, only a grim certainty that this was far from over. The Indomitable groaned and shuddered around him, the gravity well's pull growing stronger by the second. Helm, get us out of here, he barked, his voice raw. Full reverse thrust now. The engines howled as they strained against the singularity's grip, the ship's frame creaking under the stress. For a heart-stopping moment, they seemed to hang suspended on the brink, the event horizon yawning before them. And then, with a lurch and a shudder, the Indomitable broke free, clawing its way back from the abyss. Logan exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, sagging back in his chair. They'd survived, battered, bloodied, but unbroken. And as long as humanity endured, as long as men like Logan Simpson stood ready to defend what was right, Yuki Omi-san, there was still hope. The Indomitable shuddered as Logan slammed his hand down on the firing control, the gravity well projector unleashing its devastating payload. On the view screen, The beam of pure gravitational force speared the Kryn dreadnought, the massive ship convulsing as the singularity blossomed at its heart. Logan gripped the armrests of his command chair, his knuckles white as he watched the dreadnought stretch and warp, its hull plates shattering like glass under the immense strain. With a final silent scream of tortured metal, the ship came apart, vanishing into the swirling vortex of the singularity. The bridge crew erupted in cheers, but Logan held up a hand, his eyes never leaving the view screen. "It's not over yet," he said grimly. As if on cue, the singularity expanded, its ravenous hunger unsated by the destruction of the dreadnought. Kryn ships were plucked from the void, dragged kicking and screaming into the abyss, their engines flared with desperate intensity, fighting against the inexorable pull. But it was futile. One by one, they winked out of existence, consumed by the very weapon they had sought to use against humanity. Logan felt a grim sense of satisfaction, tempered by a growing horror at the weapon's sheer destructive power. The Theta scientists had assured him the singularity would dissipate once its energy was expended. But as he watched it continue to grow, doubt began to gnaw at his gut. "Sir, the singularity," Reeves' voice was taut with alarm. "It's not stopping. It's actually accelerating." Logan whirled to face the science station, where the chief Theta researcher was frantically poring over the data. "What's happening, Doctor? You said this thing would be stable." The scientist looked up, his face ashen. "The models, they didn't account for this level of mass ingestion. The singularity is feeding on itself, growing exponentially. At this rate, he didn't need to finish." Logan could see it for himself on the view screen. The singularity was expanding with terrifying speed, swallowing not just ships, but the very stars themselves. The Ocampa system's primary, a once proud yellow star, stretched and distorted as it was sucked into the hungry maw of the black hole. A chill ran down Logan's spine as the full magnitude of their miscalculation hit home. They had unleashed a monster, one that threatened to devour not just the Kryn, but everything in its path. "Emergency jump all ships," he barked, his voice cracking with urgency. "Reeves, get us out of here now." The Indomitable shuddered as its hyperdrive engaged, the stars blurring into streaks of light as the mighty ship fled the doomed system. On the view screen, Logan caught a final glimpse of Ocampo space, and the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. In their desperate bid to save the Ocampa from the Kryn, they may have instead condemned them to an even worse fate. The guilt and horror of that knowledge settled in his chest like a leaden weight. The Indomitable shook again as it accelerated to full retreat velocity, the bridge crew working frantically to coax every last ounce of speed from the straining engines. But even as the ship hurtled through the void, Logan knew there could be no escape from the bitter truth. They had won the battle, but in doing so they may have lost everything else. The Indomitable burst out of hyperspace, the stars snapping back into pinpricks of light as the mighty ship decelerated. Logan wasted no time, his voice cracking across the bridge like a whip. "Full stop now." The crew, still reeling from the horrors they'd just witnessed, scrambled to comply. The Indomitable shuddered as its powerful engines reversed thrust, bringing the behemoth to a relative halt. Around it, the rest of the battered fleet emerged from their own hyperspace jumps, forming up around their flagship like wounded animals seeking protection. Logan slumped back in his chair, the weight of his actions crashing down on him like a physical force. The order had come from his lips, the firing command that unleashed the unholy power of the singularity. If the Ocampa system was lost, if millions of innocent lives were snuffed out in an instant, that blood would be on his hands. But there was no time for guilt, no luxury for self-loathing. They had to take stock to plan their next move. "Damage report," Logan barked, his voice sounding alien to his own ears, "and get me a fleet-wide status update." The crew leaped into action. The familiarity of protocol, a welcome distraction from the nightmare they'd just escaped. Reeves bent over his console, his brow furrowed as he passed the incoming data. "Fleet's taken a beating, sir," he reported, his voice grim. Heavy damage across the board. But most ships are still combat capable. We've lost the cruiser Dauntless and 2 destroyers. Casualty reports are still coming in. But he trailed off, the implication hanging heavy in the air. Logan nodded curtly, his jaw clenched. It could have been worse, far worse. But every life lost was a tragedy, a weight he would carry for the rest of his days. And Terran Command, have we been able to raise them? Reeves shook his head, frustration etched in the lines of his face. Negative, sir. Long-range comms are being jammed. Some kind of interference. We can't get a signal through. Logan frowned, a cold tendril of unease coiling in his gut. This didn't make sense. The Kryn wouldn't have the capability to block human communications not across interstellar distances, unless the Kryn, he said slowly, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. What if the Ocampa was never their true target? What if this was all just a feint, a way to draw us out? Reeves met his gaze, the same horrible realization dawning in his eyes. Leaving Earth exposed. Sir, you don't think. But Logan was already in motion, his mind racing ahead. Get us a course back to Earth now. Maximum speed. Push the engines to their limits if you have to. As the crew scrambled to obey, Logan gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white with tension. The Kryn's words echoed in his mind, taunting him. We will stop you here and now before you can become a threat to us. Had that been their plan all along? Lure humanity's defenders away, then strike at the very heart of human civilization. The thought filled him with a dread colder than the void of space itself. The Indomitable leaped forward, the stars blurring into streaks of light as the mighty ship hurtled towards Earth. But even as they raced homeward, Logan couldn't shake the sinking certainty that they were already too late. Perth was under siege, and he had left her defenseless. The Indomitable burst out of hyperspace, the battered remnants of the human fleet close behind. Logan's heart seized in his chest as he saw the scene before them. Earth hung in the void, a blue and green jewel, surrounded by a swarm of crane ships. It was an armada that dwarfed even the massive force they'd faced at Ocampa, a sea of alien metal that stretched as far as the eye could see. My God, someone whispered on the bridge. There's so many of them. Before Logan could respond, the comm crackled to life. A familiar voice filled the bridge, dripping with triumphant malice. Hi, Captain Simpson. You're just in time to witness the final moments of your pathetic species. Earth is ours, and with it, the future of the galaxy. Logan's response was a wordless snarl. He slammed his fist on the comm, cutting off Cox's gloating. All ships engage the enemy. Defend Earth at all costs. The human fleet surged forward, battered and depleted as they were. They charged into the fray with fierce, desperate courage, weapons blazing as they closed with the Kryn ships. They knew they were outmatched. They knew it was suicide, but they'd be damned if they let their homeworld fall without a fight. The battle was joined, and it was a slaughter. The Kryn ships, fresh and undamaged, tore through the human fleet like tissue paper. Everywhere Logan looked, human ships were dying, blossoming into balls of fire before fading to cold, drifting debris. The screams of the dying filled the calm channels, a cacophony of despair and agony. But even in the face of annihilation, the humans fought on with reckless abandon. Logan led the charge, the Indomitable a beacon of defiance amidst the chaos. They carved a path through the Kryn lines, the ship's guns never falling silent as they spewed death and destruction into the enemy ranks. Their target was clear, Kyax's flagship, a monstrous dreadnought that dwarfed even the mighty Indomitable. If they could take out the warlord, throw the Kryn command into disarray, maybe, just maybe, they could buy Earth a chance. So it was a futile hope, and Logan knew it, but it was all they had left. As they closed in on the flagship, the Kryn ship swarmed around them like angry hornets. A wall of firepower hammered into the Indomitable, reaching its hull in a dozen places. The ship shuddered and groaned, emergency alarms blaring as consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Logan was hurled from his chair, slamming into the deck with bone-jarring force. He felt something warm and wet trickling down his face, blood from a gash on his forehead. Around him, the bridge was in chaos. Crew members lay dead or dying, slumped over their stations. Smoke filled the air, acrid and choking. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Logan hauled himself back into his chair. He looked around at his bridge crew, what was left of them. In their eyes, he saw determination, resolve, a grim acceptance of the inevitable. They knew this was the end, but they would face it together as a crew, as a family. "It's been an honor serving with you all," Logan said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Let's give these bastards a fight they'll never forget." A ragged cheer went up from the survivors. With a final defiant roar, the Indomitable plunged into the heart of the Kryn formation, guns blazing, engines howling. They tore into the enemy fleet, ripping through ships like an avenging angel. Kryn vessels exploded left and right, consumed by the Indomitable's relentless onslaught. But it wasn't enough. It could never be enough. For every ship they destroyed, a dozen more took its place. The Indomitable was an island of defiance in a sea of enemies, and that sea was closing in. Explosions rocked the ship, tossing crew members about like ragdolls. Bulkheads crumpled, decks collapsed. The mighty dreadnought was coming apart at the seams, succumbing to the Kryn's overwhelming might. In the end, it was a stray shot that sealed their fate. A Kryn energy beam, a lance of searing light, pierced the Indomitable's reactor core. For a moment, there was silence, a pause, a held breath. Then the core detonated, a miniature sun erupting in the heart of the ship. The indomitable pride of the human fleet vanished in a blinding flash of light and fury. It was over, Earth's last hope, snuffed out in an instant. As the light faded, the Kryn ships moved in, descending on the planet like vultures to carrion. The occupation had begun, but even as the last human ship burned, even as the Kryn set foot on Earth's soil, a final message echoed across all frequencies. It was Logan's voice, recorded in the final defiant moments of the Indomitable's valiant stand. "This is Captain Logan Simpson of the TF Indomitable. If you're hearing this, then we have failed. Earth has fallen." His voice was steady, resolute even in defeat. "But know this, we did not go quietly into the night. We fought, we bled, we died, but we did not surrender, and as long as even one human draws breath, we will continue to fight." A pause heavy with emotion. "You may have won this battle, Kirks, but the war is far from over. We will resist, we will rise, and one day we will reclaim what is ours." Logan's final words rang out, a promise and a prophecy. This is not the end. This is only the beginning. The message repeated over and over, a final act of defiance echoing across the stars, a beacon of hope in the darkness. The Kryn had won, yes. They had taken Earth, crushed humanity's mightiest defenders, but in doing so they had sown the seeds of their own destruction. They had awakened a sleeping giant, a species that would not rest until they were free once more. Humanity would rise from the ashes, would fight and bleed and claw their way back from the brink. The battle for Earth was over, but the war for the galaxy was just beginning. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.